In modern warfare, drones have become the most ubiquitous weapon on the battlefield. They are the eyes that find targets, the claws that strike them, and the shadow that follows every soldier, every vehicle, every movement across the front line. On both sides of the war in Ukraine, first-person view drones, small, devastating, account for more vehicle kills, more casualties, and more destroyed positions than any other single weapon system. A single FPV drone, costing as little as $300 and weighing less than a kilogram, can destroy a tank worth $2 million, kill an officer whose training took years, or collapse a bunker that took days to build. They have fundamentally transformed the nature of combat, turning every square meter of the battlefield into a potential kill zone and making concealment a matter of life and death for every soldier on both sides. Russia has invested billions of rubles in building a massive FPV drone capability, recognizing that this technology is essential to maintaining offensive pressure on the front. Russian authorities have mobilized civilian drone manufacturers, converted commercial electronics workshops, established dedicated production lines, and organized volunteer networks to mass-produce thousands of units per month. These drones are stockpiled in depots close to the front and distributed daily to units that use them to hunt Ukrainian soldiers, destroy Ukrainian vehicles, and degrade Ukrainian defensive positions from Kharkiv to Kherson. Days ago, Ukrainian forces struck at the heart of that capability. In a single overnight operation, a coordinated Ukrainian strike destroyed a Russian drone warehouse containing approximately 6,000 FPV drones and their components. In one night, months of Russian drone production were erased. Thousands of weapons that were days away from being deployed against Ukrainian soldiers on the front line ceased to exist. The strike also hit a Russian airborne command post and an ammunition depot on occupied territory, compounding a night of losses that Russian commanders will be scrambling to recover from for weeks. This is how Ukraine blinded 6,000 Russian eyes in a single blow. The operation began not on the night of the strike, but months earlier, with the painstaking work of Ukrainian military intelligence. Locating Russian drone storage facilities is one of the highest priorities for Ukrainian intelligence services, and one of the most difficult. Russia has learned from painful experience that concentrating military assets in known locations makes them vulnerable to Ukrainian long-range strikes. Drone production and storage have been deliberately dispersed across dozens of small workshops, converted industrial buildings, shipping containers, and nondescript warehouses. Many of these facilities are located in urban areas where striking them risks civilian casualties. Others are positioned deep in Russian territory, beyond the range of many Ukrainian weapons. But intelligence work is patient work. Ukrainian analysts monitor intercepted Russian communications for references to drone shipments, delivery schedules, and logistics routes. They track commercial vehicle movements using satellite imagery and open-source data. They analyze social media posts by Russian soldiers who sometimes inadvertently reveal the locations of military facilities through geotagged photos or identifiable landmarks in the background of videos. They cultivate human intelligence sources in occupied territories and inside Russia itself. Piece by piece, over weeks and months, the picture comes together. In this case, Ukrainian intelligence identified a warehouse complex in a Russian city that was being used as a major consolidation point for FPV drones destined for the front. The facility was not a small workshop or a temporary storage site. It was a full-scale logistics hub that received shipments from multiple production sites across Russia, performed quality checks and final assembly on partially completed drones, stored them in standard shipping containers organized by type and destination unit, and dispatched them in regular batches to frontline formations. Intercepted logistics communications indicated that the warehouse typically held between 4,000 and 8,000 drones and associated components at any given time. Batteries, controllers, cameras, shape-charged warheads, propellers, radio transmitters, and complete assembly kits ready for rapid deployment. The facility was guarded by a small military security detail but was not hardened, fortified, or protected by air defense systems in any meaningful way. The Russians apparently believed that its location, deep in Russian territory, far from the front line, embedded in a large urban area, provided sufficient protection against Ukrainian strikes. They were wrong. Ukrainian planners spent weeks preparing the strike. They confirmed the warehouse's exact location through multiple intelligence sources. They studied the layout of the facility, the number and positioning of shipping containers, the access roads, the guard rotations, the timing of deliveries and dispatches. They identified a window when the warehouse was likely to contain the maximum number of drones, shortly after a major delivery cycle and before the next batch of dispatches to the front. They selected the weapons that would give them the highest probability of destroying the contents. Long-range strike systems capable of reaching the target with precision. The strike was launched on the night designated by Ukrainian command. Multiple long-range strike systems were employed. The exact weapons used have not been publicly disclosed by Ukrainian authorities, but the effects were devastating and unmistakable. Ukrainian forces hit the warehouse complex directly, with multiple precision impacts that penetrated the structure and detonated among the densely packed shipping containers inside. 3 containers filled with FPV drones and components were confirmed destroyed outright, their contents reduced to molten plastic, shattered circuit boards, and twisted metal. Several additional containers were severely damaged by blast effects and the intense fires that followed. The resulting conflagration burned for hours, fed by thousands of lithium polymer batteries, the same batteries that power FPV drones and that are notoriously volatile when exposed to heat or physical damage. Lithium battery fires burn at extreme temperatures and are nearly impossible to extinguish with water. They produce their own oxygen as they decompose, sustaining the blaze even when conventional firefighting methods are applied. The warehouse became an inferno. Secondary explosions, likely from shape-charged warheads stored alongside the assembled drones, continued through the night, sending shrapnel and debris into the surrounding area and preventing Russian firefighters from approaching the blaze for hours. Witnesses in the area described hearing explosions continuing well past dawn. By morning, the warehouse was a gutted shell. Its roof collapsed, its walls blackened, its contents reduced to ash and twisted containers. Ukrainian intelligence assessed that approximately 6,000 FPV drones had been destroyed, a figure later confirmed publicly by the Ukrainian General Staff. The Russian Ministry of Defense, as usual, made no comment. This number is staggering in its implications. What 6,000 drones means on the battlefield. To understand the impact of this strike, you need to understand what 6,000 FPV drones represent in the brutal arithmetic of daily combat on the Ukrainian front line. A typical Russian frontline unit deploys between 20 and 50 FPV drones per day in active combat sectors. Some particularly intense sectors consume even more. During major assault operations, Russian drone usage can spike to over 100 per day in a single brigade's area of responsibility. Each drone is a single-use weapon. Once it strikes a target or is lost to electronic warfare or Ukrainian counter-drone measures, it is gone forever. At average consumption rates across the entire active front, 6,000 drones represent between 2 and 4 weeks of supply for all Russian forces engaged in combat. For a single sector, the loss is even more dramatic. 4 to 10 months of operational capability erased in a single night. This means that units that were expecting drone resupply within days will now wait weeks or potentially months. Drone operators who have become accustomed to having functionally unlimited ammunition, who could launch strike after strike against Ukrainian positions, vehicles, and soldiers without worrying about conservation, will suddenly find themselves rationed to a handful of drones per day. Commanders who built their tactical plans around drone-enabled reconnaissance and strike will be forced to revert to older, less effective methods. Sectors that relied on FPV drones as their primary weapon for destroying Ukrainian fortifications, vehicles, and personnel will be forced to use conventional munitions, artillery shells, mortar rounds, guided missiles that are more expensive per kill, less precise in urban and trench environments, and far slower to deploy against fleeting targets. The ripple effect extends beyond the immediate combat units. Russian drone training programs, which have been expanding rapidly to meet the insatiable demand for operators, will face a shortage of airframes for practice flights. New operators who were scheduled to deploy to the front with their own allocation of drones will arrive empty-handed. Maintenance and repair teams that service and modify drones will have nothing to work on. The entire ecosystem that Russia has built around FPV drone warfare in this sector will stutter and slow, and every day of delay is a day that Ukrainian defenders face less pressure from the sky. The financial cost is equally significant. A Russian FPV drone costs between $300 and $800 to produce, depending on the model, components, and level of sophistication. Some of the more advanced models, equipped with thermal cameras, extended-range antennas, or heavier warheads, can cost over $1,000 each. At an average cost of $500 per unit, 6,000 drones represent approximately $3 million in direct production cost. But the true financial impact extends far beyond the hardware itself. The production capacity that created those drones, the factory hours, the raw materials, the skilled labor for assembly and quality control, the logistics of transportation from factories scattered across Russia to a consolidation point near the front, cannot be instantly replicated. Russia will need weeks to reproduce what was destroyed in a single night. And during those weeks, Ukrainian soldiers on the front line will breathe a little easier. The shaped charge warheads stored with the drones add substantially to the loss. Each warhead costs between $100 and $300, and their manufacture requires specialized explosives and precision machining. 6,000 warheads represent another $600,000 to $1.8 million in direct costs, and more critically, represent months of production from facilities that are already operating at maximum capacity under sanctions pressure. Batteries, cameras, flight controllers, radio transmitters, and other electronic components account for another significant loss. Many of these components are sourced through gray market channels from China, Turkey, and other countries. Supply chains that are fragile, expensive, and increasingly targeted by Western sanctions enforcement. Replacing the electronic components destroyed in this strike will require new procurement orders through channels that are becoming more difficult and more expensive to maintain. Total estimated material losses from the warehouse strike alone, approximately $5 to $8 million in drones, warheads, and components. When combined with the command post strike and ammunition depot destruction, total losses for the night climb significantly higher, estimated at $15 to $25 million across all three targets, accounting for destroyed equipment, ammunition stocks, infrastructure, and the operational disruption costs of rebuilding command networks and rerouting supply chains. But the numbers alone do not capture the full scale of this loss. 6,000 FPV drones represent 6,000 Ukrainian soldiers who will not be targeted tomorrow. 6,000 vehicles that will not be hunted. 6,000 positions that will not be struck from above. Every drone destroyed in that warehouse is a life potentially saved on the Ukrainian side of the front line. That is an equation that no financial calculation can fully express. The simultaneous strikes. The warehouse strike was not an isolated action. On the same night, Ukrainian forces conducted 2 additional strikes that compounded the damage to Russian military capability across multiple fronts, demonstrating the kind of coordinated, multi-target operational planning that has become a hallmark of Ukrainian deep strike doctrine. First, a command post belonging to a Russian airborne unit was hit near a city in the border region. Russian airborne troops, the VDV, are among the most capable and experienced units in the entire Russian military. They are used as shock troops for critical operations, deployed to the most contested sectors, and their command infrastructure is considered a high-priority target precisely because its disruption has outsized effects on Russian combat power. The destruction of a command post does not merely kill the personnel inside, although casualties among command staff are devastating in their own right. It destroys the communications equipment, the maps, the operational orders, the coordination networks that allow a unit to function as a coherent fighting force. A brigade without a functioning command post is a collection of individual companies and platoons operating without unified direction, capable of defending their immediate positions but unable to coordinate attacks, shift reserves, or respond to Ukrainian operations with any speed or coherence. Rebuilding a command post takes days at minimum. Replacement equipment must be transported from rear areas, new communications links must be established and encrypted, and surviving staff must reconstruct the operational picture from fragmentary information. During those days, Ukrainian forces in the sector hold a decisive advantage. Second, an ammunition depot on occupied territory in southern Ukraine was struck and destroyed. The depot had been a critical logistics node for Russian forces in the area, storing artillery shells, mortar rounds, small arms ammunition, rocket-propelled grenades, and other munitions that were distributed daily to frontline units. Ammunition depots are among the most important targets in any war. Without ammunition, the most powerful tank is a steel coffin, the most capable artillery battery is a collection of expensive paperweights, and the most motivated infantry squad is a group of men with empty rifles. The destruction of this depot creates an immediate supply crisis for Russian forces across a wide area, forcing them to rely on more distant depots connected by longer, more exposed supply routes. Routes that run through territory increasingly saturated with Ukrainian reconnaissance drones and long-range strike systems. Every kilometer of additional supply distance adds risk, adds time, adds fuel consumption, and adds vulnerability. Russian truck convoys that once drove 20 kilometers to resupply will now drive 50 or 80. And every additional hour on the road is another hour of exposure to Ukrainian interdiction. The combined effect of these three strikes, drone warehouse, command post, ammunition depot, executed on the same night, represents a coordinated campaign to degrade Russian military capability across multiple domains simultaneously. Drone warfare capability degraded, command and control disrupted, ammunition supply severed. This is not random targeting or opportunistic strikes. This is systematic, intelligence-driven warfare aimed at the structural foundations of Russian military power. The logistics, the communications, the stockpiles that allow an army to fight. And Ukraine is dismantling them methodically, one night at a time. Strategic implications. Russia's drone warfare capability is one of the few areas where it has achieved rough parity with Ukraine in this war. Both sides deploy thousands of FPV drones daily, and the competition to produce, deploy, and counter these weapons has become one of the defining technological contests of the conflict. The destruction of 6,000 drones in a single strike represents a significant setback to that capability. Not because Russia cannot eventually replace them, but because the replacement takes time, resources, and logistical effort that are already stretched to their limits. Russian drone production relies heavily on imported components, particularly from China. Microchips, cameras, flight controllers, gyroscopes, GPS modules, and lithium polymer batteries are all sourced from foreign suppliers through networks that operate in a legal gray zone between legitimate commerce and sanctions evasion. Western sanctions have made these supply chains more expensive, more fragile, and more difficult to maintain. Every disruption, whether from sanctions enforcement, diplomatic pressure on transit countries, or physical destruction of stored components like this strike, cascades through the entire production system. A factory that loses its stock of flight controllers cannot simply order more overnight. A workshop that runs out of camera modules must wait weeks for new shipments through increasingly circuitous and expensive routes. The strike also sends a powerful psychological message to every Russian facility involved in drone production, storage, and distribution across the entire country. Nowhere is safe. If Ukrainian intelligence can locate and destroy a warehouse deep in Russian territory, surrounded by a civilian urban environment, it can locate and destroy any warehouse, any factory, any depot. This forces Russia to disperse its storage even further, use smaller and less efficient facilities, move shipments more frequently in smaller batches, all of which increases costs, reduces throughput, introduces more opportunities for error and loss, and slows the overall flow of drones to the front line. The logistics overhead of securing, concealing, and dispersing drone stockpiles becomes a tax on Russian military efficiency that compounds with every successful Ukrainian strike. Since February 2022, Russia has lost approximately 249,000 soldiers killed and wounded. It has lost over 11,600 tanks, nearly 24,000 armored fighting vehicles, and thousands of artillery systems. The defense industrial base is operating under sanctions pressure that degrades quality and quantity simultaneously. Now, Russia is losing the one-weapon category where it had achieved competitive capacity, FPV drones, in quantities that take months to replace. The attrition curve across every category of Russian military capability is steepening, and every major Ukrainian strike pushes Russia further along it toward a breaking point that grows closer by the month. The intelligence war. Behind every Ukrainian strike is an intelligence operation that often takes longer, requires more skill, and involves more risk than the strike itself. The analysts who identified this warehouse, confirmed its contents, tracked its supply cycles, mapped its layout, and determined the optimal strike window are soldiers whose names will never appear in headlines and whose faces will never be shown on camera. They work in underground bunkers and cramped offices, staring at screens for hours, correlating fragments of information from a dozen different sources, intercepted communications, satellite imagery, open-source intelligence, human sources, until the picture becomes clear enough to act on with confidence. This kind of intelligence work requires not just technical skill, but a deep understanding of how the enemy thinks, how he organizes, and where his vulnerabilities lie. Ukrainian intelligence officers have spent nearly 3 years studying Russian logistics patterns, learning the rhythms of Russian supply chains, understanding how Russian units request and receive equipment. They know the typical transit times from factories to depots, the standard container sizes used for drone shipments, the radio frequencies used for logistics coordination. This institutional knowledge, accumulated through thousands of operations, countless hours of analysis, and the hard lessons of a war that never pauses, is an asset that cannot be bought, cannot be replicated quickly, and cannot be defeated by any amount of Russian concealment or deception. Every successful strike feeds the next one. The intelligence gathered from the destruction of this warehouse, the patterns of Russian response, the alternative storage locations they activate, the new logistics routes they establish, becomes the foundation for identifying the next target. It is a cycle of observation, analysis, action, and exploitation that Ukraine has refined into an operational art form. The Russian warehouse is gone. 6,000 drones are ash. The command post is rubble. The ammunition depot is a crater. And tomorrow morning, Ukrainian intelligence analysts will sit down at their screens, open their databases, and begin the patient, meticulous search for the next target. Because in this war, the next target always exists, and Ukrainian intelligence will always find it. Ukraine fights, Ukraine sees, Ukraine strikes. This is Iron Front. The battlefield speaks louder than propaganda,